Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Chris and this is a new lesson on Learn British English Free. We're active on YouTube and Facebook currently. Today's lesson is a common request. It's about the speaking part of the IELTS exam, and it came from a user called Huseyn a while back. So I'm going to be giving you some general thoughts on how to maximize your score in the speaking part of IELTS. I haven't taught IELTS much for some time, although I'm very familiar with it. I've taught it a lot in the past, and I've been looking at the marking criteria, which I will talk about later. They don't seem to have changed much. So you might, if you're interested in IELTS, you'll probably know a lot of this, but we'll see if there's some information there that's new for you. And please do write your comments, add your own advice for people. That would be very helpful. Where to start then? So the speaking part is normally about 15 minutes long, if I remember, split into various parts. The main thing is, as well as focusing on your general speaking, there are two strands to it, I suppose. One is that to improve your general speaking as much as possible, but you do need to be aware of the format of the questions. For example, the first ones are short, and the examiner or interlocutor, not an easy, not a common word, that interlocutor will be expecting you to stick to the expected format. So short answers, normally a couple of lines for the first, for the introductory passage. And they might get a bit annoyed if they have to keep cutting you off or interrupting you. You might lose some marks because of that. So do your homework in terms of how you should answer each of the three sections of the speaking part of the test. That's a major thing. As a native speaker, I'm aware that if we or I were to take the IELTS test without preparation, without knowing what to do, I wouldn't do very well, because you have to study and know how to answer each question in the way they want. That applies to speaking and also to writing in particular. It would be very difficult to walk in without anything and get a high mark, even as a native speaker. A common problem I see with students is that they try too hard to come up with what they think are impressive bits of vocabulary, and especially idioms. And for this part, I need to talk about the marking criteria, the speaking band descriptors, which I mentioned at the start. I'll put the link to this in the comments, either on Facebook, YouTube, or in the description on YouTube. So the IELTS speaking band descriptors, you can find them on IELTS.org, and they explain to you exactly how to get the mark that you need. Really, really important. But this is related to what I just said, because a lot of students will try really hard to, think of or learn really impressive idioms or advanced vocabulary. However, your vocabulary and grammar is only half of your mark for the speaking part. The other half, pronunciation and fluency and coherence. The mistake many people make is they try to, in the exam especially, think of hard words, and they take ages to do it. And then you lose all your marks, because the examiner doesn't care about coming up with some amazing idiom which no one ever uses. They want to hear you speaking quite well and quite confidently, using vocabulary that you know how to use. So by all means, use some idioms, but make sure they're ones that you know, and preferably are quite short so that you can remember them more easily. I was teaching a student recently. We were doing speaking practice, and he has an amazing vocabulary, but he doesn't practice very often, and he was taking a long time to produce the advanced vocabulary. So I had to advise him that, keep it simple, because you will lose the marks for fluency and pronunciation. So that's really the key part. Perhaps the most important thing I wanted to say is keep it simple. Learn the vocabulary and things that you can use, which you're comfortable with, and that you can use in a variety of ways, please. Remember that in the other parts of the IELTS exam as well, but especially with speaking, it's not all about grammar and it's not all about vocabulary. They want to see that you can talk naturally, so to speak, or relatively naturally. So those things are really important, and to keep it simple is the main thing that I can advise. As well as that, I mentioned pronunciation. It's one of the 4 elements of their band descriptors. And don't forget to pronounce the words properly, and to learn and practice that, to drill new words and new expressions. I was told very reliably that the most common source of misunderstandings in English is not grammar mistakes, but actually pronunciation. And it makes sense because English pronunciation varies wildly between countries and even between regions in the UK. For people learning it as a second language, it's very hard to master. And with the range of languages around the world, it can at times be very difficult to understand someone if their pronunciation isn't that clear. So as well as the fluency side of things, remember to practice pronunciation especially. I know it's hard. I study foreign languages too, and it's almost impossible sometimes. But this is a really good way to bump up your marks, especially as you actually get a quarter of your marks through the pronunciation. So please don't forget about it. If you focus only on your vocabulary and your grammar, you will not get the highest score that you can. When you are getting ready for the exam on the day itself, try to focus only on English in the hour or so before to get your mind in the zone. And in general, to prepare, of course, if you can get lessons, that would help. Not always the case. You don't absolutely have to, of course. There are great lessons online that you can find for free with lots of examples for all the different parts of the IELTS test. I particularly like videos, of course, to learn from. And for the speaking part of IELTS, what better than to watch a video of the high-performing students? You can find many on YouTube, for instance. Type in IELTS speaking band 7, perhaps. Band 9 is not always recommended because they'll be performing at a level which might be beyond what you can realistically do, at least for now. But look for the people who are doing really well and see what you can learn from them. And that's it. Not so many tips, but I hope that it's clear what I'm getting at. You don't need to try really hard, if that makes sense. You should learn how to answer the exam questions properly in speaking, and then approach it homogeneously as a whole. Like I was saying, look at the speaking band descriptors, and you'll see the 4 different parts to it. You'll understand that, oh, it's not only about grammar and so on. You really have to be as good in general at speaking as you can. Maybe that sounds hard, but actually it's not, because it's not as complicated as the original approach. All right, that's it. Please do leave your comments, your own advice, and any other questions or requests about this. Always interesting. The IELTS thing is so important for so many people around the world because it's the main thing that is used by a lot of companies and universities to decide whether or not to accept people. If you're taking it soon, good luck to you, and do get in touch if I can be of more help. This is Chris on Learn British English Free on YouTube and Facebook. Thanks very much. Ta-ra.